So let's have our moderator, Nathan Munusamy, co-founder of Money Match and managing partner of TH Capital, followed by his fellow panelists, Pratik Gandhi, co-founder and COO of Nium, Tessa W., co-founder and COO of Xendit, Reyes, Chief Commercial Officer of GCash. Now, payments have come a long way in the past decade as economic conditions shift alongside the rise of consumer expectations. Banks and fintech institutions have gone through a transformation that has and will continue to reshape the industry. So let's hear what our experts have in mind for this session.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for staying back for today's afternoon session. But today is really, really exciting. I think it's pretty rare. You're going to get three very, very different, very, very successful unicorns and the founders and the C-levels of unicorns on the stage together. And all of them are running very successful, large-scale fintechs, primarily operating here in Southeast Asia. While some of the businesses are even global as well. And a lot of them are throughout varieties of different types of fintech products, from cross-border payments to e-wallets, and the whole parts of collections and card issuances and so on and so forth. So these guys here on stage are literally at the leading edge of fintech innovation over here in Southeast Asia. And the size and the scale of their businesses, being unicorns each, is literally evidence of their success thus far. So yeah, it's really, really exciting today. My name is Nathan Munusamy. I'm today's moderator. I'm the co-founder of Money Match. We ourselves are a cross-border payments fintech startup out of here of Malaysia, primarily focused on the SME market, giving very much localized and personalized service to the SMEs here in Malaysia. Over here, I have with me Ren from GCash. He's the Chief Commercial Officer of GCash. Tessa, who's the co-founder and the COO of Xendit, as well as Pratik, who's the co-founder and the COO of Nium as well. I'm going to pass over the mic over to them, and they're going to introduce themselves and give a little bit of background to their own selves first, and then a bit of background to their own companies before we move on to some of the other questions. Please go ahead, guys. Maybe Tessa first, ladies first, and then...
Thank you. Thanks for the honor. My name's Tessa. I'm co-founder and CEO at Xendit. Xendit is a payment infrastructure player. So we're a B2B payment provider. We basically make sure money can move from one place to another in market as well as cross-border. We started out in Indonesia. We've since expanded to the Philippines, working with our partner here as well. We currently process about $15 billion worth of payments per annum. And yeah, very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tessa. Ren, on to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Reyes, the Chief Commercial Officer for GCash. GCash is the largest e-wallet in the Philippines. We currently have 66 million users and 5.2 million merchants in our platform. We processed roughly 3 trillion in the first half in GTV, for the first half of the year. We're very happy with our unicorn status early pre-pandemic. And then actually just, not so long ago also reached our dual-corn status as well. And we're very proud about that. But there's still a lot of way to go. So I think we've built a base on payments. We've started our foray into financial services. And we're going now more into financial services, but also deeper into regions and different segments like the youth. There are a lot of Filipino OFWs internationally, so we're looking at serving them as well. And of course, the B2B segment that who also need capability to interact with our consumers. So that's GCash. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ren. Over to you, Pratik.
So my name is Pratik Gandhi. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer for Nium. Like Tessa's, so ours is also an infrastructure B2B fintech, which basically means we move money for SMEs, banks, e-commerce companies, etc., from one country to another. We're also large issuers of Visa and MasterCard cards as well. So we issue about 30 million cards, and in fact, we are the second largest issuer of single-use cards in the entire world. So basically, think of payments, think of us. That's really payments.
That's a nice tagline. All right, so you guys have built extremely interesting businesses over the past few years. In fact, I would say maybe 10 years ago, there was no such thing as individual businesses, whether it's from Nium, Xendit, or even GCash, right? So in your own words, if you guys can describe, how have you guys changed the game with your own technologies, in your own words per se. 10 years ago, an SME or an individual or OFW could not even access such things, right? So how have you guys come in, use your technologies, provide a middle layer in some cases per se, improve the scenes, work together with banks, and what have you guys done, in your own words, over the last few years and changed the scene? Decades ago, there was no such thing as fintechs. Then there were fintechs, and that over the past few years, you guys have risen up, totally changing the landscape in your individual countries. So maybe a bit of description in your own words about the impact of your own technologies on your own communities. Maybe Ryan, go ahead first.
Sure. Well, maybe 10 years ago, if you think about the financial services sector, it really catered more to the affluent market. But in Southeast Asia, and particularly the Philippines, bulk of the market, over 70%, is actually in the working class segment. So I think the big technological change that we actually did is that we actually catered and designed the whole experience and the whole product for this unserved and underserved market. And by doing so, we actually simplified the whole complexity of financial services for the consumer. And in doing so, there is a need. We knew that there is a need. It doesn't mean that the working class do not have financial needs. They do. But it was just too inaccessible for them. I think working on this actually allowed us to gain their trust. And after continuous use, it has become a habit to most Filipinos.
Right. So I think Xendit started in 2015. And I think a lot of people, especially in Indonesia, they've forgotten what 2015 was like. 2015, flashback in time, Gojek, to be able to get a Gojek, which is Grab equivalent in Indonesia, you have to pick up the phone. There was no app. To be able to make a payment, you have to take out these little things called tokens for PINs, right, OTPs. You can't do it through your phone. Nothing is instant. To be able to do refunds, you have to call somebody. You have to do a lot of things manually. There was even infamously a feud between two banks where in order to transfer from one bank to another, as a consumer, you have to put in the district, the region, and everything else in between, including the branch name, and you're like, why would I know, where your branch is, right, of your bank account? So what Xendit has done is we've really changed the way that's happened. We've enabled payments to be made instantly, seamlessly. And we're not on billboards, right, because we're B2B. A lot of you probably don't know our name, unlike all the consumer brands. But if you're going to a website where underlying they're using our technology, and you can press one button and you make a payment, that's it, seamlessly, instantly, you can accept payments. That's the impact we've had. We've enabled people to transact digitally in markets like Indonesia and Philippines. We've been very impactful in moving the wheels of the economy by bringing people to go online, to be able to make payments, accept payments online without having had credit cards, sometimes even without being banked, right? Because we allow people to pay through 7-Elevens of the world. So I think that's been something I've been really, really proud of.
So I'd love to say that we actually foresaw what we have done, but honestly, the way that we started was very different. We were actually, a P2P payments company called InstaRem, which stood for Instant Remittance. And over a period of time, we actually realized the need was actually bigger in the B2B business, right? So, and then, one thing led to another. In fact, one of our biggest breakthrough markets was Malaysia. And I recall that, I had no clue of how to manage this because even though I was staying in Singapore, I didn't know how the, licenses worked and all the rest in Malaysia. So, but we came here, we fixed it. And then over a period of time, we kept clinching the various kind of opportunities that came to us as well. We actually bought a company in the peak of COVID, which was into travel. And, so something which was actually unthinkable because travel industry at that point in time was virtually the 4-letter word which you don't want to talk about. But we bought it. We bought it for a song. We bought another company also in travel. And so today, we've actually become pretty large in the cards business. So I think one thing led to another. So if there's one thing that, many of you are founders, that you should figure out is keep looking for opportunities. There has to be several balls up in the air at any point in time. Some of them may fall on the ground, but it's okay. Something will click and, you just move forward on that.
Thanks very much for that. We'll try to keep like 5-10 minutes toward the end for a bit of Q&A. So if you guys got a bit of questions, there are mics here in the middle of the room for you guys to ask at the last 5 to 10 minutes of our session. Moving on to the next part of some of our questions that we can answer for the delay of our audience. Let's talk a bit about the pandemic, right? How has the pandemic affected your business? Well, mostly positive for most of the fintechs, but more importantly, challenge your thinking about how you guys can scale things up, challenge the paradigm of pushing cashless more so than ever before, right? So I think that's something that's pretty interesting, that the pandemic has automatically triggered a more organic growth in cashless. So maybe that has changed a bit of your mindsets and your own ambitions as well over the last couple of years, right? So maybe I give Pratik a bit to start at this point per se, but yeah, maybe how has the pandemic changed things for you guys?
Okay, no, super. So I think the answer is not going to be too different from the rest of my co-panelists. I think the COVID period, we started with, some lot of trepidations on how it would impact us. Actually came out on tops because of all the good reasons. People wanted more payments. They wanted less of brick and mortar. So, being digital was the way to go. So that was the one part of it. We were very, very anxious whether it's going to impact our revenues. It actually went up. But on the other hand, something else also happened, right? So, there were lots of money which was floating around, so valuations also went up. And that, I think all of us took benefit of that. We all became unicorns around that point in time. And that changed something else. So the moment we became a unicorn, one of our biggest issues was how to hire the right talent. And the moment the unicorn tag came into place, that was the time when people started thinking, hey, listen, these guys, maybe they're credible. And, we started getting the right talent. And we could actually become choosy in who to get rather than, trying to run after the right talent. So I think in all senses of the word, it was a great period for us. I'm sorry. I mean, I know a lot of you may have, some sad stories to tell also, but from a fintech standpoint, I think it was really good.
I guess I'm in the middle, so I'll always go second. Fantastic. Actually, Xendit, in the very beginning of the pandemic, we were serving mostly travel clients, so e-commerce for travel. So we saw our volumes dip excessively, extremely, right? I think one of our travel partners told us, we're really happy because we didn't completely die. Our volumes only dropped 99%, not 100%. So there was that glimmer of hope, 1%. Well done. So what we learned through the pandemic were a few things. One part was because we had to suddenly think about diversifying, it really woke us up to thinking about how do we get other industries on our platform. And we were really successful. We ran a whole campaign of anti-COVID vaccine as well, right? So we really had to get up from that rut. The second part that happened through the pandemic, though, was right before we had expanded to the Philippines. So because we learned of what happened in Indonesia, we were able to target different kinds of markets in the Philippines where we were a bit more heavier on e-commerce, and therefore we rode that wave of growth after the first few months of uncertainty. The third thing that kind of changed through the pandemic as well, we've been super heavy on enterprise, so a lot of our customers are really big players. Right now, for example, in the Philippines we help Grab. In Indonesia we help the likes of Traveloka. But through the pandemic we saw this massive change, which is a lot of SMEs started signing up in droves to our platform. At one point, it was something like 10,000 signups in a month. So we really had to change the way our products work, and we had to make sure that these SMEs, they don't care about fancy APIs, they don't care about all the bells and whistles. They want a simple product that works so they can accept payments. So really a lot of learning, and we've really grown out of the pandemic much stronger than ever.
Ren, what about you guys in the Philippines?
Well, for GCash, maybe to put some context, between 2012 to 2020, we grew our user base to 20 million users. We're now at 66. So in 2 years, you can imagine how much it has scaled. And how did we successfully do this? And this is where the learnings come in. I think number one, we had to go, in the time of crisis, when the pandemic hit, we had to go back to who we were. Right? And we went back to our vision, which is finance for all. Right? And finance for all actually meant serving the underserved, serving the unserved. Right? So, and going back to the service, we said, people are stuck in their house. There's a lockdown. They have no access to funds, no access to all these different services they need, right? And that's why we said we have to find ways and partner with with the government, partner with the different logistics partners, and then our supermarket merchants to deliver the basic goods and services and the funding from the government to our consumer, to our fellow Filipinos. And actually, by doing that, they really saw what GCash was all about and how it really helped them. I think it became a lifeline for Filipinos in this time of need, and I think that solidified our role in their lives. So I think that's the first learning. I think secondly, double down on partnerships, right? We couldn't do it on our own. Xendit is a partner. They said they came in just before the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you also for helping us out.
for doing that. But yes, I think government played a huge role, and of course the cooperation between the different banks, interoperability, and making it easy for Filipinos to get access to funds and to send money from different institutions was very important. And then at that time, a lot of merchants still were not enabled online, so they had to do it very fast, and we had to change the way we actually onboarded all of these merchants, and to actually be able to do it from 3 days to 24 hours, to be able to onboard them. So I think double down in partnerships, adjust your process, make it easy, right? And lastly, really kind of continuously be agile. We didn't know what was going to happen next, right? And we had to kind of, as Pratik mentioned, be open, have different balls in the air, and kind of and be able to kind of see what the consumers really want, what the market really wants, and be able to quickly deliver those. Because when something's happen like this, you never know what is needed, so it's very important that you're prepared. And I think we were very lucky that GCash was prepared to take, to actually really help and be of service during that particular time.
Thanks. Sticking on to that point about governments, right? So maybe next I'll ask you guys a little bit about what are your opinions and your experiences thus far when you deal with the local regulations over here in Southeast Asia. It's obviously one of the biggest challenges when it comes to Southeast Asia because there's a clear lack of unification or standardization of regulation in terms of payments especially, right? While you've got Europe as a shining example of how easy it could be through the SEPA network, right? Over here, you're going to get individual regulations, individual licenses. Depending on your businesses, as you guys expand out, you get more and more product lines, right? Not just cross-border, then you got e-wallets, then you got merchant acquisition, and you got a whole bunch of stuff as well. So a little bit touch upon, like from a Southeast Asian perspective, obviously here at Wild Digital, how have you guys been finding it thus far, and a bit of what you guys looking forward to the future. Obviously, it's not our place to give advice to the regulators, but what we're looking forward to the future, I guess, in the world when it comes to regulation over here in Southeast Asia. Maybe, Pratik, if you could start off, being a global company like Nium, you guys deal a lot with.
Okay. So, I mean, it's a difficult thing to. So regulations are a very interesting thing because actually we are actually regulated in. We've got 13 licenses, so it allows us to operate out of 38 countries. But the interesting aspect is that when FX is involved, regulators are almost always the same. So they're always very happy to receive foreign exchange, but they are very, very tight when it comes to sending money out. That's a generic statement. Of course, there are countries which are going to be different. China, or even in the case of Japan, etc., there are actually caps of how much you can receive into the country as well, right? So there'll always be exceptions. So you've got to figure out which country has what regulations. Usually, COVID has made it even more difficult, and I was telling the co-panelists just before we came here that, you don't expect regulators to be extremely, quick. They have to be very thorough. It's become even more difficult after COVID, right? So then the other aspect is that regulators normally are interested in choosing how you get the money into the country. So there are, these banks that are allowed, so licensed entities which are allowed. So you don't expect like fintechs, etc., to be allowed to send money in. So what that does is it puts a lot of anti-competitive behavior, because banks then want to be controlling the way the money comes in. And I've got, I don't know how many of my co-panelists have got this experience, but banks refusing to open accounts of many of us because they say, you guys are high risk or whatever else. Now that, together with the regulations, is a deadly combination. And it's always the same. Every country is going to be different. Malaysia is different than Singapore, is different than Indonesia, is different than Japan. So you got to figure out how to do it. So it's always a tricky one to sort of get past. Long answer to a short question.
Cool, Tessa?
Very passionate. I think, look, for me, you really have to have some empathy for the regulators, right? When Xendit started in 2015, in Indonesia, there weren't even any regulations regarding payment gateway that just was issued. Licenses only started to be issued, I think, 2016, or because the regulation was just being finalized. There were also a lot of other regulations and licenses that already came out for other parts of fintech, like e-money and whatever else. So really, regulators have had to play catch up a lot in the markets where we operate, right? If you look into, again, Indonesia, after payment gateway regulation came out, Bank of Indonesia have had to restructure the way they regulate again to consolidate the licenses, understanding that for a lot of us fintech players, it's not just about just doing payment gateway or remittance or whatever. A lot of us want to provide many different things all at once. So I think it's been very challenging for them as well. And they've had to be able to adapt extremely, extremely quickly to an ever-changing, extremely fast, ever-changing environment, right? So I think that's one part. But look, regulators everywhere care about a few of the same things. Number one, it's always about consumer protection, right? They care about consumers. If consumers are being defrauded or they're losing money, they're going to get very, very upset. And fair enough, that's what regulators are there for. The second thing that they care about is probably anti-money laundering, right? That's, again, very obvious in payments. The third thing probably would be data privacy, data security. And again, that is designed so that they can protect the consumer. So I think as long as you have empathy and you understand that, you can work with them to be able to provide the right product in a very compliant manner.
Thank you. Well, I was actually very surprised and happy to hear we were having an early discussion earlier with Pratik and Tessa. And they said that the BSP, or the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, as a regulator, is one of the more progressive regulators. So, of course, I was only operating in the Philippines, so I was very happy to hear this, right? But I think one thing that I must say, one thing that I agree with Tessa when she said that they don't have an easy job. I think one thing that has been working for us is actually the private sector through PPMI, which is in a way an alliance or an association of different FSIs and e-wallets who in a way help manage InstaPay, or the payment gateway that allows for interoperability in PesoNet. So through this body, we actually kind of work in helping the regulatory body to actually form the policies, right? And actually come up with something that works. And actually that, I think, allows us to be faster to market, because they actually get the input of the private sector, working with the government to deliver, against all the concerns that the government has, but also deliver against the concerns that the private sector has. So it actually is a fast way for us to get to market. And I think also in terms of the new policies of the government, we have EO 170 in the Philippines, which actually promotes digitization of payments, not just in the government and across the Philippines. So I think these different kind of trends towards digitization by the government actually helps momentum or provide more inertia behind the wallets and the financial institutions. And we're looking forward to continue to work with them. So
if I may just add here, right? Southeast Asia is not the exception, like I said.
True. Yeah.
We have experience in Europe, different jurisdictions. One country to another is always going to be different, right? So expect that, but understand it as I think you also mentioned, figure out what exactly is it, and Tessa also mentioned, there are legitimate concerns that they have, and some different governments or different regulators may have different concerns, but broadly they continue to be the same. Figure it out, have chats with them, show them that you're keen and how you're serious in taking care of the money laundering and data protection and other such issues, and normally they are forthcoming.
Thanks so much for that, guys. I think that moving on from that, I think that one part of the effects of the pandemic has definitely been the democratization and the further enhancement of cross-border commerce, especially cross-border e-commerce. Over here in Malaysia per se, so many of us over the pandemic have moved so much of our grocery shopping, our daily essential shopping over to e-commerce, whether it's to Shopee or Lazada or today TikTok live streaming as well. It doesn't really matter whether it's social commerce, mobile commerce, social commerce. It's completely changed over the last few years, especially here in Southeast Asia. And obviously the fintechs are very, very much involved in this, right? So I guess a bit of a question this time for Tessa first. You guys are literally the leading champions of cross-border commerce per se, right? I think that trying to solve certain bridges and gaps over here, doing a business out in Philippines, in Indonesia, in the future Malaysia and Singapore, networking out together, owning one shop out there, importing goods from China, sending it out there, distribution, so many payments aspect. So my question is basically, what's next? What do you see as what's next for cross-border e-commerce? And I guess for Nium side, from a global perspective, what's next from a global level? While for GCash, what's actually next for GCash? You guys are already the leaders over there in the Philippines. What kind of services are you guys next looking to launch out in the Philippines? But this time we go with Tessa first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll speak through the payment side. I think the biggest challenge with cross-border e-commerce is that in a place like Southeast Asia, it's all about what we call APMs, alternative payment methods, like GCash, right? So non-card-based payment, because let's face it, not many people can apply for credit cards. I actually, I've been telling everybody this. The number one bank in Indonesia, I tried to apply for a credit card once and I got rejected. I was very, very upset. And I'm like, imagine if I can get rejected, imagine everybody else. That's why card penetration is so low. Both Indonesia and Philippines, I think, hover around 3 to 5%. So for those who are doing cross-border e-commerce, how can you enable payments in different markets? People like to think Southeast Asia is all the same. It's not, right? Filipinos are pretty fantastic. They love to sing and dance. They're very outgoing, very loyal to brands. Indonesians will line up for 1 hour for a discount. Behaviors are extremely different, right? The rates of the unbanked are also still very high. So it's all about how can we give all these people access to digital forms of payments to enable them to transact. In terms of outside of payments, then it's all about how do you actually move the goods, right? That's going to be a big challenge as well. Indonesia itself has 17,000 islands, Philippines has 7,000, everywhere else, Southeast Asia, in total is like 25,000 islands. Logistics is going to be a massive, massive challenge. So I think going forward, what's going to be interesting is, one, actually regulators working together to provide cross-border payments. So QR code interoperability, it's now beginning to happen. You can scan your QR code wherever you are. That can hopefully work for e-commerce as well, right? Second thing is hopefully some sort of trade deals for logistics, so you can get your goods without having to pay exorbitant amounts for customs, right, wherever you shop.
Thanks. Pratik, from a global perspective?
Yeah, so there are two aspects to this in my view, right? One is the global payments for e-commerce companies. The other is also the collections, right? Because in many cases, you want the e-commerce company, which is not there in a particular country, to actually collect the payment in that particular country and then send it back. So it's a collections and a payment aspect of it. That's one. Second is the whole concept of how about enabling these e-commerce companies in terms of the embedded finance concept, where you actually allow them to take the payment and actually be participant of the entire customer journey. So rather than them using somebody else, allow them to create a wallet, for instance, allow them to create a debit card, for instance, or a charge card for their reward points, etc. Or allow them to have a BNPL or a pay later kind of a scheme. So these are various things that companies which have got the APIs and who are the modern money movers, they are the ones who have the capability of doing this. And honestly, this can be, we don't even know what the size of this market is right now, but everybody thinks it's trillions of dollars and it could get into even more, at some point in time. So huge opportunity in this respect.
GCash, you guys are already behemoths, bigger than banks from a certain standpoint. There's a number of active customers and all that. But so what's next for you guys?
Yes, well, for GCash, I think we really play mainly in the Philippine market, but we can also, from our license standpoint, cater to the Filipinos or OFWs who are outside of the Philippines, and there's 10 million of them, right? So I think, I guess in terms of learnings, first is know who you're trying to serve, right? I think that's the first. Second, of course, know the rules and regulations, because we can't do everything. That's why we need to find partners like Nium and Xendit, of course, because I think the capability is very important. I think number one, and also the licenses are very important. So to make sure that you don't kind of tread into dangerous waters, right? And then lastly, what use cases are you looking to serve? As Tessa was saying, there's a lot of alternative payment methods. There's a lot of different forms that cross-border payments can take. I think what's important to your market, I think that's what you need to kind of understand and go with first, right? And for us, it's really the OFW market, Filipinos. Remittances, of course, as you know, is a big driver for us. And then I think second is when, travelers, a lot of Filipinos, and I think that's true for anybody. The world is smaller now, people like to travel, and if you go to certain markets, sometimes cash is no longer the accepted payment method, right? So having these alternative payment methods is a way for us to serve them, even when they're not at home, right?
So I just want to add one more aspect, which is the size of the payment typically of an e-commerce company tends to be so much lower, right? So try and do that with the old traditional methods. You try and send these $100, $200, $500 payments via the normal banking channels. I'm sorry if there are bankers here, through Swift or something else, and you'll probably end up, paying maybe 10% of the cost only on these charges. But this is where something like a fintech comes into place, and they can give you transparency, they can give you exact costs that you'll end up, incurring, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, for us, I think this is how, core of our business comes through.
Cool. Thanks so much. All right, guys, opening up for a bit of Q&A to the floor. If anybody's interested, please do hit up. All right, I think we have a first question. Please do introduce yourself and go ahead to ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Samuel. I come from Singapore. I represent a blockchain company. So, on the back of what you just discussed about cross-border payments and payments using SWIFT, what do you foresee as the threat or opportunity coming from crypto asset or digital asset as a payment, as a cross-border payment? Do you see that as a threat or opportunity for the company? And the second part of the question would be, if you see that as an opportunity, do you see regulations as a roadblock to that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very clear question. Please, anybody want to take that on first? Thank you, Pratik.
I think crypto as a payment, and this is my view, crypto as a payment method is sometime coming. It's not there yet. The cost is too high. The ramp on, ramp off is not too easy. There's a lot of interesting stuff that is happening right now. Many retailers are planning to come into it if they haven't already done so. Blockchain, however, is an interesting one. But remember that, when I talk about APIs is another route of also messaging, different, right? So I think there is more, and again, like I said, this is me talking, there's more legs to the blockchain than it is to the crypto as far as payments are concerned. To your question on the regulators, I think they are right to be a little questioning at this point in time, because to be honest, we all know that crypto, while for all the good things that have happened, there are lots of negative things that are also associated with it. Most clearly what, for instance, Tessa had mentioned the money laundering as being one of the clear top, concerns for a regulator. And we all know that, because of the anonymity which is there associated with the crypto, there are concerns which are always there, right? So I think there'll be a time, I think this discussion is good. At some point in time, we'll come to the right answers to this, but we're not there yet.
Thanks. Maybe Ren, from a GCash perspective, you guys have any plans for blockchain or crypto-related innovations helping crypto investments potentially for the OFW market in a more legitimate manner? But yeah, there are many forms potentially for this, right?
Well, I think first we're actually in some way helping in the crypto market already because we are partnered with other cryptocurrencies as a form of payment for crypto. But it's definitely a space we're studying very well. I think one opportunity that we see, it's actually quite complicated. It's very complex to actually get into it. But I think it's very interesting as a form of investment or as a form of new kind of way to generate wealth, I guess, for consumers. So we are looking at this very seriously, and we're looking to demystify this and make it simple for consumers to actually access. So yeah.
Thanks. Tessa, what about Xendit? I think that, I guess blockchain or crypto for payments is pretty been there, done there. It's not something new. But I guess when you add in layers of financing or cross-border or supply chain towards the blockchain network, that might be quite useful for cross-border payments. So yeah, is Xendit looking at such new technologies at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we help actually a lot of the crypto exchanges accept and disperse fiat payments. But I think, yeah, for regulators, it's a really tough pill to swallow, right? To be able to accept payments in a way where they won't be able to monitor where the funds are going. So I think that's one tough challenge. I think, yeah, I agree. I think it's a long time coming in that sense. But, sometime in the future, I don't think it's preventable to have some sort of digital currency. But maybe sometime in the future, it will be government-issued digital currencies that will also be around. Yeah.
CBDCs.
Maybe just to add, I guess from the consumer side in the Philippines, I was kind of surprised to find out an interesting statistic that the Philippines actually has the highest adoption of cryptocurrency and blockchain at 46%.
Again, BSP is much more open.
No, so for those kind of looking into this space, I think looking at the Philippine market is something that you might want to do.
Interesting. Thanks for the insight. All right, I think we have time for one more last question. Please, thank you very much. The gentleman in white.
Hi. So if you guys had to place a bet on a B2B fintech product that is associated with payments, which one would that be?
Thanks for the question. You guys, any volunteers?
Maybe I'll start. It's always easier to be the first to answer. I think the whole idea of embedded finance, basically being able to create a bank account seamlessly online through an app that may not necessarily be the bank's app, I think is the way to go going forward. I think in Indonesia itself, for example, there's still about, 51% unbanked. So I think that's going to be key. It's going to be very powerful. This is what actually a lot of players, including e-commerce players, are looking to, right? For example, recently there was an announcement, Bukalapak is working together with Standard Chartered, right, to open bank accounts online. I think that's going to be what I'm banking on the next year or two.
Ren?
I guess it depends which market you're serving. So for us, we have a lot of MSMEs. And I think an important space for the B2B segment and MSMEs is the link of payments to inventory. Right? So I think that's a big help that they need. It's not, they don't have the systems for it. So enabling that is, I think, a bet that we're looking at.
Cool. Pratik?
Final word. I think, so I agree, Tessa. It's been, embedded finance, should be there because you're basically enabling a lot of these companies which are not into finance to integrate finance into their fields. I understand the markets today are about 50 billion, 60 billion, 70 billion, depends on who you talk to, but it could get into trillions of dollars, right? So if I have to lay down my finger on one thing, it's embedded finance.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Our time is up. Thank you so much for attending today's session. All right, please give a big hand to all our unicorn co-founders. Thank you.
Such a wonderful session. Let me remove my mask. I don't know why I'm wearing my mask all of a sudden. Just had a scare. Okay. Wow, they're having a freestyle photo op. Yes, that's the way to go. Future forward. Thank you to our lovely speakers.